Welcome to Asia Ghost Stories, where eerie, spine-chilling, and mysterious tales from across Asia are brought to life. Prepare yourself, for what you're about to hear will send shivers down your spine and make you question. Is the world truly limited to what we can see? In this episode, we delve into a haunting story titled, Don't Mock the Dead, a forgotten warning, a naive joke, and an unintentional provocation of the spirit's wrath. Never underestimate the realm of the beyond, for the price of doing so may far exceed your imagination. Let's dive deeper into the story together. This is about Trang's story. 8 years ago, a tragic event happened to me and 3 of my friends, something I can never forget. It was a day near the end of 2008 and I was still a 12th grader. I had 3 close friends who lived in the same village. We'd been playing together since the 3rd grade all the way through 9th. I was a tomboy when I was little, so I only liked playing boys' games like marbles, shooting birds with slingshots, spinning tops, and soccer. I didn't like playing with girly things. By 9th grade, we took the high school entrance exams. I passed and got into the public school along with Thiot. I knew he liked me, but I only saw him as a close friend, like a brother. Hugh and Hop went to the private school. Even though we were older, my personality hadn't changed much. I still enjoyed hanging out with them. They all dropped out of school eventually. Some opened internet cafes or played video games while I played Audition. That afternoon, Hop and I came back from playing video games when we ran into Thiot and Hugh. They invited us to go out to the graveyard at the edge of the village to eat cat meat. I'm a bit of a scaredy cat, so I said I didn't want to go, but the 3 of them kept egging me on, calling me a chicken. Annoyed, I finally agreed to go with them. I headed home first, while the 3 of them went to Thiot's house to prepare the cat meat. Thiot's parents worked in the coal mines in Quang Ninh, and he'd been living alone since 8th grade. They sent him money for expenses, so he was the wealthiest one in our group. Back then, cell phones were a luxury, but Thiot had a flip phone to contact his parents. In 11th grade, his younger sister, Lynn, who was in 7th grade, came to live with him. When it was time for my parents to watch the news, I asked for permission to go to Thiot's house to study, saying that it was almost the end of the year and I needed to prepare for the graduation exam on the 5th, followed by the university entrance exam. My parents readily agreed because Thiot was the smartest and best student in our group. They always said I wasn't even half as good as him. I got lucky getting into the public school, but I had to admit they were right. I couldn't find a flashlight to take with me, so I wouldn't be scared. So I grabbed 4 candles from the ancestral altar and a lighter, stuffing them into my pocket. When I got to Thiot's, I saw the 3 of them putting food into a lunchbox. Hugh told me to grab a mat, saying we were heading to the cemetery. Lynn wanted to come along, but the 3 of us were adamant that she couldn't. So after she finished packing everything up, I carried the mat and trailed behind them. Unlike typical summer evenings, which are cool and pleasant, the cemetery, situated near the fields, felt different. For some reason, there was no wind, and the sky was devoid of stars. It was only a little before 8 p.m., but it felt like 10 p.m. I stuck close to Hugh because he had the flashlight. He told me to spread the mat on a patch of bare ground surrounded by graves. I took out the 4 candles and lit them, placing one in front of each of our piles of food, then took the cat meat out of the lunchbox and put it on a plate. They ate and drank rice wine while I peeled an orange. After about an hour, Thiot said to Hugh, "Hey, want to go take a piss?" So the 2 of them got up and went behind a grave to pee. I noticed that there was a fresh grave with a wreath of flowers nearby, so I yelled at Thiot, "Hey, you 2, can't you pee a little further away? Can't you see the grave right there?" They were both a bit tipsy. Thiot turned around and said, "What do you know, you're a girl. What are you scared of? He's already dead. You think he's going to climb out of his coffin and kill us?" That guy was really smart, but he was also arrogant and, with the alcohol, fearless. He was always the ringleader in our mischievous adventures. After they finished peeing, they sat down to continue eating. Just as Thiot sat down, a gust of cold wind blew out the candle in front of him. Strangely, the other 3 candles remained lit, completely undisturbed. I tossed him the lighter so he could relight it, but as soon as he did, another gust of wind extinguished it again. Each gust of wind sent chills down my spine. Thiot, unable to relight the candle, angrily threw it behind him, muttering, "What the hell? We should just go back and buy some proper ceremonial candles. These damn things keep going out." I ignored him. Idiot. The wind blew it out, obviously. Hugh smirked and said to me, "Is that the wind from your house guest?" "There's no wind here. I'm sweating like a pig." I couldn't understand why I was shivering while they complained about the heat. It was getting late, so I said to Thiot, "We should get going. It's late. My dad will be angry if I'm out too late." Hugh said, "It's still early. Everyone's asleep at this hour. We'll leave later." I pleaded with them, "Come on, it's late. Let's go. We don't want to get haunted." Thiot hiccuped and snapped, "Fine. You're scared. Go home by yourself. We're staying a bit longer. If I die, I die. You guys are too stubborn to die anyway. We don't go all out tonight. When will we have another chance?" Seeing his resolve, I just said, "This guy's being ridiculous." None of them wanted to leave, so I resigned myself to staying. Truth be told, I wouldn't dare go home alone in the dark, especially not from a graveyard. I took Thiot's phone and started playing music, listening to The Rose House. Back then, I was a huge Bow Thy fan, so I'd made Thiot download all of her songs. As the music played, Hugh, Hop, and Thiot started singing along, then climbed onto a large, ornate tomb made of marble behind us. They were acting goofy and laughing, and I started to get scared. I said, "Show some respect, guys. It's nighttime. Someone might hear you and get mad." Thiot held out his hand and said, "Come on up here. I'll pull you up. It's cool up here. What are you afraid of? There are no such things as ghosts and demons. You're such a wimp." I knew he wouldn't listen to me, so I turned to Hugh. "Let's go home, Hugh. It's late. Your mom will be looking for you." He was an only child, and if he wasn't home by 9 p.m., his mom would search the whole village for him. He jumped on and off the tomb, saying, "Don't worry about her. It's still early. What's the rush? We'll head back soon." I was terrified and kept looking around, my heart pounding in my chest. Being in a cemetery at night was unsettling. As I scanned my surroundings, Thiot shone his flashlight on the inscription on a tombstone. It read, "Nguyen Van B, born date, died date, age 36. Thiot laughed loudly and said, "This guy doesn't look like a B. Small. At all." The others burst out laughing too. Suddenly, I heard the sound of splashing water and voices murmuring, as if people were talking nearby. It wasn't us. Startled, I looked around and saw a tall man dressed in white standing by the irrigation ditch, along with a shadowy figure I couldn't make out. The cemetery was surrounded by rice paddies, and the ditch was used for irrigation. I called out to Thiot, "Thiot, Thiot, there are people over there. Get down, they might yell at us." They followed my gaze. Thiot said, "They're just fishing with electric shocks. What's the big deal?" Hop then said, "Hey, let's go see what they're doing. They're dressed fancier than I am for electrofishing." Back then, monochrome outfits were trendy, like all black or all white. It was the style popularized by singers on their album covers. He jumped down from the tomb and headed towards the ditch. Curious, Thiot, and Hugh followed him. As we approached, the two figures vanished into thin air. Hugh, Hop, and I saw them disappear, but Thiot, walking behind us, hadn't noticed. He kept complaining that we were making a fuss over nothing, getting excited over some guys fishing and dragging him along. He looked around and asked, "Where did those guys go?" As soon as he asked, Hugh, Hop, and I took off running without a word. Thiot, clueless about what had just happened, ran after us. When we reached the streetlight near the entrance to the village, Thiot yelled, "What are you guys running for? Like you've seen a ghost. Aren't you going to pack up our stuff?" Hugh said, "Didn't you see anything?" Thiot looked confused and asked, "See what? What happened?" Hop said, "What do you mean, see what? We saw a ghost." Thiot asked, "Where?" I was irritated. He was usually so smart, but now he was acting incredibly dense. I snapped at him, "Didn't you see those two guys just disappear? If it wasn't a ghost, it was a demon. I told you to go home ages ago, and you wouldn't listen." Thiot said, "I wasn't paying attention. So what about our stuff back there? Aren't we going to get it?" Hugh said, "Forget about it. We can come back for it tomorrow." "I'm not going back there now." Thayet got annoyed and yelled, "What era are you guys living in? You still believe in ghosts and demons? Fine, go home then. I'm going back to get our stuff. Anyone want to come with me?" Hugh and Hop exchanged glances. "No way, we're leaving it till tomorrow." "I'm too scared to go back," they said. Thayet, without another word, marched back towards the cemetery. I said to Hugh, "Should we go back with him?" Hop said, "You guys can go back if you want. I'm not. I'm too scared." Hugh agreed. "Me neither," he said. Neither of them would go, and I was also afraid, so the three of us decided to head home. I took a shower, changed my clothes, and went to bed. It was around 1 a.m. when I heard Lynn, Thayet's sister, calling me, "Trang, Trang." I went out to the balcony and saw her standing at the gate. I went downstairs and asked, "What's wrong, Lynn? Why are you here so late?" She looked panicked. "Is my brother here?" she asked. I was startled. We'd left the cemetery at 10 p.m. He should have been home by now. "He isn't home yet?" "We left a while ago," I said. Lynn frantically explained. I waited and waited for him to come home so I could lock up and go to bed. I went to Hugh's house and he said Thayet wasn't there. I wanted to go to Hop's house, but I don't know how to ride a bike. I grabbed my keys and bike, along with a flashlight, and gave Lynn a ride to Hop's house. Turned out he was asleep. I stood outside and yelled, "Hop! Hop!" After a while, his mother, Mrs. Ton, came to the door, grumbling, "What's all the yelling about in the middle of the night? Let people sleep." Although I felt awkward, I still asked, "Mrs. Ton, is Thayet sleeping here?" She recognized my voice and said, "Is that Trang? Thayet didn't come here. Why are you looking for Hop?" She came out to the gate and asked again, "So, you're looking for Thayet? If he's not here, you guys should go home." She said good night and went back inside. Lynn was anxious. "Do you know where he could be?" she asked. "I have a bad feeling. He never sleeps anywhere else." "He used to sleep over at Hugh and Hop's houses," I said, "but since Lynn moved in, he's always slept at home. He said she's afraid to sleep alone." I thought it was strange too, since Thayet doted on his sister. He would never leave her alone at night. "But he's a grown-up now," I continued. "Maybe he's angry at us and went to sleep at Uncle Nam's house or something." I tried to reassure Lynn. "He's probably sleeping somewhere. Don't worry, I'll sleep with you tonight." Lynn nodded, and I went back to her house to sleep. I was exhausted, so after comforting Lynn for a bit, I drifted off to sleep. I had a dream, the first in a long time. I dreamt that Thayet was standing in a dark and gloomy place, shrouded in fog. His face was pale. I ran towards him and asked, "Where did you go?" "Lynn and I were looking all over for you." He didn't respond, just looked sad. I asked again, "Thayet, where have you been all night? Why didn't you come home?" He looked pale and sickly as he stammered, "Trang, I'm cold. I want to go home." I ran after him, but the more I ran, the further away he seemed. I shouted, "Thayet, wait for me." I woke up with a start to find Lynn crying. I asked, "What's wrong, Lynn? Couldn't you sleep?" Lynn sobbed, burying her face in my arms. "I just had a dream about Thayet. He said he was dead. I'm so scared." My heart sank. I just had a dream about him too. I glanced at the clock. It was only 4 a.m. I said, "I just dreamt about him too." Lynn cried even harder. "What if something happened to him?" she sobbed. "I've been so worried about him all night." I tried to comfort her, saying, "It's just a dream. He probably sensed we were worried about him. He's a big guy. Nobody can hurt him." Just then, Quinn, Thayet's German shepherd, started barking furiously. Lynn and I went outside, turning on the porch light to see what was wrong. Quinn was staring at something in the middle of the yard, barking and backing away. Then he started howling like a wolf. Lynn shouted, "Quinn, be quiet. What are you barking at?" Quinn was usually a well-behaved, gentle dog. I rarely heard him bark. He greeted everyone who came to the house with a wagging tail. I often teased Thayet about having a useless guard dog. He only ate, slept, and played, never barking to guard the house. A dog like Quinn needed a good dose of ginger and chili to spice him up. I was surprised to see him acting so ferociously. He ignored Lynn's shouts and continued howling, as if in pain. Finally, Lynn threw a flip-flop at him, and he ran to the corner of the house, whimpering and shaking like a leaf. Lynn and I went back inside to wait for sunrise so we could go get Hugh and Hop to help us look for Thiot. Around 5 a.m., Mr. Quiet, a neighbor, knocked on the door and called out, "Wake up, Lynn!" Lynn and I opened the door. Before we could ask anything, he blurted out, "Thiot, your brother, he's dead. They've brought his body to the cultural center. Hurry up and go there, Lynn." Lynn and I were in disbelief. Lynn started wailing on Thiot. "Sister, how could he be dead? He was fine last night." I pulled Lynn towards me, told her to get on my bike, and we raced to the cultural center. When we arrived, I saw a body covered with a mat, lying in the courtyard. It was the same mat I had carried to the cemetery last night. Beside it were the lunchbox, the net, the alcohol, and the fruit we had brought. Lynn rushed towards the body, pulled back the mat, and looked at Thiot's pale face, his lips frothing. She shook him, crying on Thiot, wake up and come home with me. You promised you'd take me to Quang Ninh to visit Mom and Dad during summer break." She clung to his body, sobbing, and asked the people around us, "Uncles, aunties, what happened to my brother? He was perfectly fine last night. How could he just die like this?" Everyone shook their heads, unsure. Mr. Quiet explained, "Early this morning, I was delivering goods when I saw some guys from the next village who had been electrofishing. They shouted that there was a dead person in the cemetery. I went to check and recognized Thiot, Mr. Tina's son, from our village. I helped them carry him to the cultural center. The police will be here soon." I watched as Lynn continued to shake Thiot's lifeless body, clutching him desperately. I still couldn't believe he was dead. I pulled Lynn away gently. "Lynn," I said, "crying won't bring him back. You need to be strong." Lynn stood up, hitting me as she cried, "It's all your fault. You all went home, leaving my brother alone at the cemetery. Why? Tell me why." I panicked, unsure whether I should tell her the truth about leaving Thiot at the graveyard. I was afraid of being blamed, so I lied. "We all left together. I don't know why he went back." Lynn sobbed even louder, "I don't care. Bring my brother back. On Thiot. Wake up." I didn't know what to do, so I started crying too. "Thiot, I'm so sorry. We should have stayed with you. I shouldn't have left you alone. I'm so sorry." Mr. Quiet, seeing me cry, said, "I knew it. It's always like this with young people. I saw 4 sets of chopsticks and bowls, but only one body. They must have been drinking, got into a fight, and then... So, who else was with you and Thiot?" Terrified, I cried and explained, "We didn't kill him. Last night, Thiot, Hop, Mrs. Tan's son, Hugh, Mrs. Yen's son, and I went to the cemetery to eat cat meat. Hugh invited us. Then Hugh, Hop, and I saw something and ran away. Thiot didn't believe us and wanted to go back to pack up our things. I was too scared to go with him, so I went home. I don't know how he died. The villagers started gossiping. Some said he was killed by a ghost, others said by a demon. One man suggested he might have been drunk, passed out, and died of exposure." Mr. Quiet suddenly pointed and yelled, "And where's Hugh, your nephew? He's the one who put these ideas in their heads. Couldn't they eat at home? Why did they have to go to the graveyard? Go to Tan's house and get Hop and Hugh over here. I need to talk to them." Panicked, I grabbed my bike and rode to Hugh's house. I found him exercising in his yard. Tears streamed down my face as I cried, "Hugh, Thiot's dead." Hugh didn't believe me. He laughed and said, "What are you talking about? It's too early in the morning for such bad jokes." I shook my head. "I'm not joking. He's really dead. He's at the cultural center. Come with me." Seeing me cry, he realized I was serious, since I never cried. They all said I was tough like a boy. He got on his bike, and I led him to Hop's house. Like me, Hugh was shocked and in disbelief. He kept asking me questions as we rode. When we arrived at Hop's house, I saw his mom, Mrs. Tan, preparing vegetables in the yard to take to the market. I asked, "Mrs. Tan, is Hop awake yet?" She looked at me curiously. "He's still sleeping. Why have you all been looking for him since yesterday? What's going on?" I said, "Mrs. Tan, could you please open the door so I can wake Hop up? Thiot is dead." She froze, keys in hand, and asked in shock, "Thiot, Mr. Tina's son? How did he die? I saw you all together last night." I replied, "It's a long story. I just need to wake Hop up first." I went inside and found Hop asleep. I reached into his pants and grabbed his crotch. Normally, I would have teased him, but I was in no mood for jokes. I slapped him and said, "Wake up! Hop! Thiot's dead. Wake up and come with us." Thinking I was joking, he mumbled, "So what? Let him die." I shook him. "I'm serious. Wake up. He's really dead. He's at the cultural center. Get up and come with us. Quick." I kept trying to wake him, but he wouldn't budge. Hugh, without saying a word, grabbed a glass of water and splashed it in Hop's face. Hop jumped up, furious. "What the hell? Why are you waking me up so early? I haven't slept all night. I just got to sleep." Hugh yelled, "Your friend, Thiot, is dead, and you're still sleeping?" Seeing our serious expressions, Hop asked, "How can I be dead?" I told him to wash his face and brush his teeth, and then we headed to the cultural center. On the way, I told them everything. We arrived at the cultural center a little before 6 a.m. There was a large crowd of villagers gathered there. A police officer from the commune approached us and took our statements. We were excused from school that day and stayed home. At noon, I went back to my house for lunch. Since Thiot's parents hadn't returned yet, they had to cremate him quickly. Thiot's mom came running over to my house. Our houses are only about 3 houses apart, with tears in her eyes. "Trang," she sobbed, "tell me, why did my Thiot die? Where did you all go that you left him alone in the graveyard like that?" Seeing her cry made me cry too. I could only apologize. "I'm so sorry, Auntie." She collapsed in front of my gate, fainting right there in the yard. Frightened, I called my mom and the other mourners to help carry her inside and put her to bed. Thiot's dad stood by the coffin, dazed, muttering something unintelligible. Lynn sat in a corner, hugging a photo of her and her brother, crying. It was a heartbreaking scene. I stayed there, serving water to the guests. That morning, the police had come to perform an autopsy to see if there was any foul play. But Thiot's uncle called his parents, and they requested that no autopsy be performed so his body could remain intact. Apparently, they'd consulted some fortune teller who said the next day was an inauspicious day, and something else was wrong too. So if they held the funeral the next day, it would bring bad luck to the family. If they didn't bury him that afternoon, they would have to wait 3 more days. So they decided to hold the funeral that afternoon. Everything was rushed since we brought his body back. There were so many people coming to pay their respects. I told Hugh and Hop to help serve water. I sat and wrote out guest registry slips, listing Thiot's cousin's name at the entrance. At the funeral procession, I didn't cry, but Hugh and Hop sobbed uncontrollably. I went to the cemetery and looked at the spot where we had sat last night, feeling a shiver of fear. Just last night, we were all here, laughing and joking. Now Thiot was gone. I didn't know why he had died. People said he died from alcohol poisoning or maybe a stroke, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something else had happened. Strange things started happening after Thiot's death. That night, after the funeral, Lynn said she was scared and asked if she could sleep over at my house. I was also afraid of ghosts because Thiot had just died. Some villagers said that during the first 49 days after death, the deceased doesn't realize they are dead and lingers around their home. I told Lynn to come sleep at my place, but she refused. I finally gave in and stayed at her house. That night, I lay in Lynn's room, unable to sleep. Lynn, exhausted from the day, was out cold. I sat at her desk, reading Dormon. Suddenly, I heard footsteps on the stairs. At first, they were light, but then they became a rush, like someone running across the upstairs floor. I figured it was Thiot's mom because she had spent the afternoon upstairs in Thiot's room, looking at his pictures and crying. It was around 11:30 p.m. I went downstairs to use the bathroom. Their house had 3 floors, but there were only 2 bathrooms, one downstairs and one on the 3rd floor, where Thiot's room was. I didn't dare go up there. I heard sobbing coming from Thiot's mom's room. I went in to comfort her, but his dad wasn't there. It was the middle of summer, but her room was freezing cold. It was like opening a refrigerator on a hot day. She was wailing, "Thiot, is that you, son? Come back and help your mom. You know you're here, don't you? You want to come back to mom, right?" I helped her up. "Auntie, please lie down. Don't sit here on the floor." She sobbed, "Trang, I just dreamt of Thiot. He said he died unjustly. I thought she was just grieving and imagining things." "Auntie," I said, "Thiot is gone. Please don't be too sad. Your sadness will reach him, and he will be sad too." She didn't seem to hear me. Staring into space, she called out, "Thiot, did you die unjustly? If you're here, give me a sign." I don't know if it was a coincidence, but as soon as she said that, a strong gust of wind blew through the room, throwing the door open. A bottle of wine fell and shattered on the floor. Quinn, who had been lying in the corner, jumped up and barked incessantly, then started howling like a wolf, just like the night before. Chills ran down my spine. I was trembling. Thiot's mom ran to the door and yelled, "Thiot, is that you? If it's you, give your mother a sign." Suddenly, everything went quiet. Quinn stopped barking and went back to his corner. I helped her, trembling, back into the house. She asked me, "Stay here and sleep with me, Trang. I'm so sad since Thiot died." I asked, "Where's Uncle Tin?" She replied, "He's sleeping at Uncle Binna's. He's angry with me. He told me to come home the other day, but I was busy with work and didn't. If I had come home, Thiot might not have died." I stayed and talked with her until morning, then went home to get ready for school. That morning, Hugh skipped school, so Hop and I rode together. We went to different schools but shared the same route. His school was about 2 kilometers closer than mine. Usually, the 4 of us rode to school together. Hugh hadn't been to school for 3 days straight. Hop and I hadn't seen him, so after school, I suggested we go to his house to see how he was doing and why he'd been skipping school. When we arrived, we found Hugh's mom at her tea stall at the entrance to the village, fixing the dog pen. Hugh was lying in bed, looking pale. I asked, "Are you sick?" He stared blankly at the ceiling. Hop said, "Dude, you look like a ghost." I asked, "Hey, what's wrong? Your friends are here, and you're not even getting up to offer us some water." Hugh sat up abruptly and grabbed my hand. "Trang," he said, "I saw Thiot today." Suddenly mentioning Thiot made me scared. I thought Hugh was still in shock over Thiot's death. "He's gone, Hugh," I said. "Please don't talk about him anymore. It scares me." Hugh's hand trembled as he said, "It's true, I swear. The day before yesterday, I saw him standing at the foot of my bed, calling me, but I didn't answer. He kept calling me to follow him. Now, everywhere I go, I see him following me. Do you think he blames me for leaving him that night?" Hearing that made my blood run cold. "Hugh," I said, "don't be ridiculous. What if someone hears you? I believe if Thiot were still alive, he wouldn't blame us. You wanted to stop him from going back, but he wouldn't listen. You're just overthinking it. Why don't you go out and do something fun to take your mind off things?" Hugh clutched my shirt. "No, he blames me. I saw him leading others to come and get me. I won't go outside. There are too many people out there." I figured Hugh was traumatized by his friend's sudden death. Hop pulled me aside. "He's acting crazy. Should we take him to the doctor?" I smacked him. "You're crazy. Don't talk nonsense. I think he's just scared and shocked. He'll be fine in a couple of days." Hop pulled his hand back. "Let's just go. This house has a creepy vibe. I feel uneasy being inside." I retorted, "You've been sleeping here for days, and now you say that? I think it's fine. I've been sleeping over at Lynn's every night since Thiot died." Hop, pale-faced, insisted on leaving. We left Hugh and went home. That evening, Hop rode his bike to my house, yelling, "Trang, come down. I have something to tell you." I was sorting conical hats. My mom took in hat-making work in her free time to earn extra money. "Wait a minute," I called back. "I'll be right down." He sounded urgent. Hurry up. It's important. I asked, what is it? He urged me, get on your bike. Let's go to Hugh's house. My mom said that Hugh's aunt is having a seance. She's possessed by a spirit, and they say Hugh's in trouble. When we got to Hugh's house, the whole neighborhood was crowded in the yard. I always seemed to be around when something dramatic was happening. Any little incident would draw the whole village out to watch. Hop and I pushed our way through the crowd and into the house. We found Hugh's mom sitting by the door, along with a shaman from a neighboring village, Hugh's aunt and uncle, and his father. Hugh sat next to them, giggling. Suddenly, Hugh's aunt started shaking, and his grandmother's spirit spoke through her. Wiping away tears with her sleeve, she sobbed, "You all only care about making money. You don't care about your children or grandchildren. And now look what's happened." Hugh's father patted her back. "Mom," he said, "if you have something to say, please tell us. We don't understand what's happening to him." "Don't mom me," she snapped. "Do you know that he was led to the graveyard last night? I had to call you and your brother to drag him back. If I hadn't, I would have lost my precious grandson." His father replied, "We didn't know anything. He's been sick and staying home for days. Yesterday he seemed better, so we let him go out. We had no idea." Hugh's grandmother caressed his face. "My poor Hugh," she wailed. "Why were you so foolish? Why did you anger the spirits? It's chaotic down there, you know?" His aunt asked, "Mother, is there any way to save him?" She sobbed, "I'm trying to ask for mercy from the spirits. He's young and foolish. He committed a taboo, offended a powerful spirit. You know Thiot, right? He's been taken to be a soldier down there. He didn't die a natural death." Hop and I exchanged terrified glances. The crowd buzzed with talk about Thiot's death. Hugh huddled close to me, tugging at my sleeve. "Trang, let's go. I'm scared." I was scared too, but my curiosity got the better of me. I pulled his hand away. "Let's stay a little longer, then we'll go." Hugh's father took his mother's hand, tears welling up. "Mom," he pleaded, "how can we save Hugh? He's your only grandson. Please try to save him." She pulled her hand away. "He's your son and my grandson. Of course, I want to save him, but I can't plead with them anymore. There's only one way. For the next 49 days, you must keep him inside the house. Don't let him go out at night. That's the only way to save him." His father said, "Then, starting tomorrow, we will lock him up in the house. We won't let him go out at night. Please tell the family to help us watch over him." "Mom." As they were talking, Thiot's aunt burst in, weeping. "Mother, why did Thiot die? Who did he offend that they took him away? Tell me." Hugh's grandmother shook her head. "I only came up here to warn you. I don't know anything. Don't ask me." Thiot's aunt clung to her. "Tell me, or I won't let you go. Why did my son die? Tell me." Everyone was silent, waiting to hear what Hugh's grandmother would say next. Suddenly, Hugh pointed to the corner of the gate. "Thiot's back. I'm scared. Don't take me." Everyone looked where he was pointing, but they were all too frightened to get close. Hugh started laughing maniacally. "Thiot, come play. It's fun here. Lots of people." Seeing him talking to himself, his father embraced him. "My poor son, why are you suffering like this?" Thiot's aunt ran to the corner of the yard, crying, "Thiot, are you there? Show yourself to your mom. I miss you so much." The neighbors rushed to comfort her. Hugh's aunt asked Hugh, "Who was Thiot with at the gate?" "There are so many of them." Hugh laughed and said, "I don't know. A lot of people. They're calling me to go with them." His uncle patted him on the back and said, "Don't worry. Your uncle, your mom and dad are here. Nobody can take you away. Don't be afraid." As they were talking, Hugh's mom started swaying and nodding her head. This time, it was Hugh's uncle, Chien, who was possessed. As soon as he entered her body, he coughed and sputtered. Hugh's aunt asked, "Mother, is that another spirit possessing you?" Uncle Chien slapped the mat and yelled, "It's me. Have you forgotten what I just told you?" He had possessed her before we arrived, followed by Hugh's grandmother. Hugh's aunt chuckled. "How would I know? I saw you leave, so I thought." Her husband snapped, Thought what? I came back to remind her of a few things. Hugh's aunt grimaced. Back in the day, he wanted to marry Thiot's mom, but she was after money, so she left him and married Tin, Thiot's father. Feeling insulted, she called out to the yard, "Where is your sister-in-law and Thiot's aunt?" The two women exchanged some heated words. Uncle Chien glared at Hugh's aunt. "I ought to slap you. You're still the same after all these years." Hugh's aunt stormed off. When Thiot's aunt came back inside, Uncle Chien said, "If you want to talk to Thiot, you'll have to wait 49 or 50 days, and then go to see Mr. Eck in Hamlet Y. Ask him to call Thiot's spirit. Remember that." He pointed at Hop and me standing by the door. "And you too. Aren't you supposed to be with your aunt? You're partly responsible for Thiot's death. You need to go see him, or you'll regret it." Thiot's aunt grabbed Uncle Chien's hand. "Is my sister, my son here? Is Thiot here?" Uncle Chien pointed to the gate. "He's standing outside, but he can't come in. Even if you go out there, you won't be able to talk to him." Hugh's aunt yanked her mother's hand. "What are you two doing, holding hands like that? Just talk." Uncle Chien glared at her. "You're messing with me." Hop, who had been trembling like a leaf this whole time, burst into tears and asked Uncle Chien, "Are we going to die like Thiot, Uncle?" He looked at Hop and said, "Your family has someone important down there, but I don't know if they can pull any strings." He pushed Hop's head down. "You kids are so stupid. You've run out of things to do, so you go to a graveyard and drink? And you desecrated the resting place of a powerful spirit. You deserve to die." Hop cried even harder. "I didn't do anything. Thiot and Hugh peed on the grave. I didn't do anything. Ask Trang. She was sitting next to me." Uncle Chien frowned. "I don't know anything about that. The spirits down there have decreed that someone must replace Thiot within 49 days. Thiot and Hugh. Hugh is being punished right now. Your family does have someone with influence down there, but I don't know if they can do anything." They didn't mention Trang. Even though I was scared, I felt relieved that my name wasn't mentioned. "I'll be okay, right, Uncle?" "I didn't do anything," I asked. Hugh's aunt snapped. "Didn't do anything? You sat on the head of a powerful spirit and you say you didn't do anything?" It turned out the empty patch of land where we'd spread the mat was the grave of an important official. Over time, it had sunk and become level with the ground. Terrified, I knelt down and started crying, hoping to beg Hugh's uncle for help. But just then, his father came back outside. I grabbed Hugh's aunt's hand. "Auntie, please ask Uncle Chien to help us. We know we were wrong. We won't do it again." Hugh's aunt said, "He's gone. I don't know anything. Just go home. I'll let you know if I hear anything." When Uncle Chien left, everyone dispersed and went home. Hugh's father came back and questioned Hop and me. We were both so shaken that we don't remember what we said. I rode Hop home. On the way, he kept asking, "Are we going to die like Thiot?" I was so scared I stopped the bike, started crying, and yelled at him, "This is all your fault. I told you not to go, but you wouldn't listen. Now see what's happened." He whispered, "I'm sorry. I didn't think it would turn out like this." I ignored him, leaving him there and riding home alone. When I got home, Thiot's aunt was telling my mom about what she'd heard at Hugh's house. As soon as she saw me, she grabbed a broom and whacked me twice. "How many times have I told you, Trang? You're a grown woman now. Stop hanging around with those boys. You never listened to me. Now look, you've brought trouble upon yourself. Why am I so unlucky?" I didn't cry or say anything, just let her do what she wanted, then went upstairs. I was so scared that I couldn't sleep that night. I stayed up all night, cuddling Myo, the cat I'd gotten from Thiot's house. Lin had found him when he'd run into their kitchen. Thiot was afraid of black cats, saying they looked like demons, so he'd given the cat to me to catch mice. I wasn't fond of cats either, but I'd complained to Thiot about the mice running rampant in my room at night, keeping me awake. My house didn't have a proper ceiling. The upper floor was just a wooden loft that my dad had recently renovated. Ever since Myo had come along, the mice had disappeared. That night, I sat holding Myo and reading. I was reading a novel by Nguyen Song-hoon. I had turned off the lights and was reading by the dim light of my desk lamp. Suddenly, the window flew open. Myo jumped up and hissed. In the darkness, his eyes glowed green as he raised his claws, swiping at the mat. I soothed him, trying to calm him down as he'd scared me too. I got up, closed the window, and went back to bed. Myo jumped down, stared at the window with his fur bristling, and growled. The window flew open again. The latch was broken, so it wouldn't stay closed. I pulled the thin blanket over my head, too afraid to look outside or go close the window. At some point, I drifted off to sleep and dreamt of Thiot again. He was sitting in my yard. I called out, "Why are you sitting out there? Why don't you come inside?" He replied, "I came to visit you." I laughed. "Yeah, right." Then I asked, "Why are you visiting? Why not come inside?" He said, "He's standing at the door. He won't let me in." Startled, I touched his shoulder. His skin was ice cold. I pulled my hand back. "Why are you so cold? You've been dead for a while now." Thiot looked up at me, his face as pale as the night he died at the cultural center. He said, "Trang, I'm dead." I woke up screaming, terrified. When I woke up, Myo was curled up next to me, no longer growling. The next morning, I was getting ready for school when I saw Hop waiting outside the gate. He usually yelled my name when he arrived, but today he was quietly waiting, probably still mad about last night. I didn't say anything either. He followed behind me for a while, then sped up and rode alongside me. "You can be mad at me," he said, "but please talk to me. Don't just ignore me. You're my only friend now. It makes me sad when you're like this." I ignored him. He continued, "Trang, come on. I had a dream about Thiot last night. I haven't slept well since he died." I turned to him. "I dreamed of him last night too," I said. "Maybe what Uncle Chien said was true. Want to go see a fortune teller this afternoon? Do you still remember the address Uncle Chien gave us?" Hop nodded. That afternoon, Hop and I went to Hugh's house to see how he was doing and to ask if he wanted to come to the fortune teller with us. When we got there, the gate was unlatched. Hugh's mom was inside, chanting Buddhist sutras. Ever since Hugh had started acting strange, his mother had been chanting every day, having been advised to do so by someone. Hugh's dad disliked it and stayed away from home. Inside, we found Hugh chained to his bed with 2 long chains. I rushed over. "Hugh, why are you chained up like this?" He looked at us, his eyes wild with panic. "Trang, I'm not crazy," he said. "I'm not crazy. Everyone says I'm crazy, but I'm not." I know, I said. "But who chained you up like this?" He shook his head, laughing and crying at the same time. "Don't come near me. Don't touch me. Get out." Hop and I kept our distance. He started crying louder. "Please, don't make me follow Thiot. I don't want to go. I don't want to be a soldier. I'm scared. I want to stay home." Hugh's aunt stood at the door, watching him cry. Wiping her own tears, she said to us, "Leave him alone. Don't come here anymore. I'm trying to keep him inside. If he goes out, he'll die like Thiot. Your families don't have any connections to help you plead with the spirits. If you keep coming around, you'll end up dying with him. Stay away from him." Hop and I were terrified. We exchanged a look and ran all the way home. That night, I dreamt that I was chained up just like Hugh. I was surrounded by water, and people dressed in white were swimming and staring at me. I screamed and woke up in a cold sweat, my heart pounding. I looked over at Lin, sleeping soundly beside me, then rushed out to the balcony to get some air. He stood a short distance away, and I was too scared to approach. He kept waving his arms in the air, then suddenly pointed towards the door as if everything was normal. He spoke to me, but in Hop's voice, "Thiot is calling for us. Let's go see him. He must be lonely down there." Hop, hearing Hugh talk like that, grabbed my arm. "I'm leaving. Hugh's gone crazy. Let's get out of here." Seeing Hugh like this frightened me too, so I followed Hop. As we reached the gate, we ran into Hugh's aunt. She saw us and asked, "Are you two here to visit Hugh?" "Yes," I replied. She continued, "You two are safe for now. Hugh is the first one thereafter. They say they only take one person every 49 days. It's not your turn yet." I had no idea what she meant, but it only made us more scared. I wanted to leave immediately, but Hop was pale with fright. He kept asking Hugh's aunt for help, but she clearly had no idea what to do. Annoyed, I dragged him away. I went home and borrowed my dad's motorbike to go to the shaman's house. It was several kilometers away, and I didn't know how long it would take to get there by bicycle. When I got to the shaman's house, there were quite a few people waiting inside. Hop, seeing the crowd, decided to stay outside and smoke at the tea stall. I went inside. Strangely, as soon as I reached the door, the shaman pointed at me and said, "The girl in the white shirt, come here, I have questions for you." I was still wearing my white high school uniform. I looked around. I was the only one wearing a white shirt, but I still pointed at myself and asked me. He pointed again. "Yes, you. I've been waiting for you." I was surprised since I didn't know him, and this was my first time visiting. He continued, "I know why you're here. Your aunt called me earlier and asked me to save her brother's son, who drowned after being lured by a ghost." I pointed towards the door. "He's outside, drinking tea." The shaman turned to a woman next to him. "Go outside and call for Hop. Tell him to come in and see me." I was beginning to get scared of this shaman. I hadn't said anything, and he already knew everything, even our names. The woman brought Hop inside, and the shaman asked us, "Do you two know what you did wrong?" Too scared to speak, I just lowered my head. Hop asked, "Did wrong? What did we do wrong?" The shaman raised his voice, "You've come all the way here, and you still don't know? Let me tell you, young man, don't think you can get away with anything just because you have a relative who's an official. Your family can't save you." Hop, trembling, bowed his head. "I'm so sorry, ma'am. I didn't know what you were asking." The shaman corrected him. "Call me teacher." "Yes, teacher," Hop replied. The shaman then asked, "Where is the other one? Why didn't you bring him?" "I don't know, teacher," I answered. "He's been acting strange ever since our friend died. He's being tormented by a spirit," the shaman explained, "because of your foolish prank. Of all the places to play, you chose a graveyard at night. And not only that, you committed a grave offense. You sat on the head of a spirit, urinated on his grave, and stepped on his chest. So he complained to the underworld officials, and now they're taking you one by one to be soldiers down there." Hop and I went pale. This was exactly what Uncle Chien had said in Hugh's dream. Everyone else in the room stopped their gossiping about our stupidity and how we deserved what we got. Hop asked the shaman, "How did you know all that?" The shaman nodded. "Your family came and told me everything. They begged me to help you, and I promised I would." Feeling a glimmer of hope, I asked, "What should we do, teacher?" The shaman replied, "You need to apologize to the spirits, of course. But it's not that simple, and you two can't do it alone. I need to talk to your parents. I'll tell them what needs to be done." I was about to ask if my mom could come the next day, since she didn't have transportation and I had borrowed my dad's motorbike. But Hugh was worried that if we waited too long, he'd die, just like the shaman had said. So, he borrowed the shaman's phone and called his mom, asking her to pick up my mom and give her the shaman's address. He wanted them there that afternoon. About an hour later, my mom, Hugh's mom, and Thiat's dad arrived. Hugh's mom, Mrs. Yen, recognizable in her brown AO dye, immediately addressed the shaman, "Teacher, please save my son. He's gone mad." The shaman looked at her. "Is your son's name Hugh?" "Yes, teacher," she replied. The shaman asked them to sit down. "Now," he said, "I'll explain everything at once. Someone from your families came earlier and told me the whole story. It's a case of foolish children make troubled parents. They are young and didn't understand the consequences of their actions. There's only one way to save them now, and I'll try my best." My mom urged, "Please, teacher, tell us what to do." The shaman continued, "On May 15th, 2008, come back here. Dig up the ground where they sat until you find the grave underneath. Once you've found it, keep incense burning continuously. When the incense runs out, replace it immediately. At exactly 1:10 a.m., you can exhume the coffin. At 8 a.m., cleanse the remains, place them in a smaller coffin, and bury it inside the larger coffin. On that day, I will come and choose an auspicious spot for you to rebury the coffin. Everyone agreed. Thiot's dad, Mr. Tin, asked, Teacher, I want to talk to my son. Is he here today? The shaman asked, Is he a tall, slender young man with a fair complexion? Yes, teacher, Mr. Tin confirmed. The shaman said, He came with your family the other day, but he couldn't speak. Tell him to come back after his 49th day. That's him, teacher, Mr. Tin said. That's exactly what he's been doing to Mrs. Yen's family. Mrs. Yen asked, Teacher, will my Hugh ever be normal again? He keeps saying he sees soldiers following him. I've had to lock him up in the house. I don't know what else to do. The shaman looked at her and said, He really does see them. I've checked. He has spiritual abilities, but he committed a sin, so he is being punished. He will escape this calamity. If he's willing to study the spiritual path, he could become a powerful shaman himself. If he agrees to study, I will take him as my disciple. The shaman told us to go home and said he'd meet us at the graveyard in a week to find a good spot to bury the official small coffin. On the afternoon of May 14th, I came home from school and found the shaman at Thiot's house, along with my mom, Thiot's aunt, Mrs. Yen, and Mr. Tin. They were waiting for me to go with them to the graveyard to show the shaman the spot. As soon as she saw me, my mom said, Go change your clothes quickly, and then come with us to the graveyard. I quickly changed and biked to the graveyard, catching up with them. I stayed close to my mom, still feeling scared. We reached a clearing in the cemetery, and before I could point it out, the shaman said, I see it. He pointed to the flat area ahead and asked, Is this it? I nodded. The shaman was holding something that looked like a large compass or a surveyor's tool made of metal. He walked around the area and told Mr. Tin to place markers so they would know where to place the smaller coffin that night. The shaman, my mom, and Mrs. Yen walked around the graveyard, looking for an auspicious spot to bury the small coffin after the cleansing ritual that night. The shaman turned to my mom. I have a suggestion, he said. I visited your house earlier, and I saw a nice piece of land behind your house. If you agree to let the official rest there, it will bring good fortune to your family. What do you think? My mom was terrified of ghosts, so she immediately shook her head, refusing his offer. Teacher, I actually think it is a great idea, but my husband won't agree. Can we think of something else? My mom had just declined when Mrs. Yen spoke up. Teacher, how about the plot of land next to my house? I have a small and used 30 square meter plot. If it's all right to bury him there, I'll offer incense regularly. The shaman looked at her and replied, That would be excellent. You just need to tend to the incense every month, and you'll be rewarded. Later on, Hugh, under the official's protection, became very successful. His parents went into the construction materials business and became quite wealthy. Hugh also became a renowned shaman, helping people but charging exorbitant fees. My mom was always annoyed that she hadn't offered to let the official be buried on our property. So it was decided that the official would be reburied at Hugh's house. Everyone went home to prepare the offerings. The shaman and Mrs. Yen had already bought the necessary items and brought them to the graveyard that afternoon. The reburial ceremony would start that evening. I went to Hop's house and told him to come to the graveyard later that night to observe the ceremony and to see what would happen with Hugh while everyone was busy looking for him. He should come a bit later than everyone else. Mrs. Yen saw me and asked, Trang, have you seen Hugh? I thought he was home, I replied. Can you ask Hop to help me look for him? She asked. He seemed better today, so I unchained him, just locking the front door. Who knew he'd figure out how to open the back door and get out? I'm at my wit's end. I hurried over to Hop's house to get him to help me search. Strangely, Hop asked me, Have you checked the graveyard? I said, We looked everywhere at the graveyard. We couldn't find anyone. He insisted, Go check the graveyard. He's there. I listened to Hop. We went to the graveyard and searched for a while. Sure enough, we found him sitting against a tombstone. As I was about to approach him, Hop stopped me. I'll keep an eye on him. You go get his parents. Hurry. Hop was usually a scaredy cat, but today he was surprisingly brave, staying at the graveyard alone. Even though it was a little after 6 p.m., the summer sky was still bright. I rushed home and told everyone to go to the graveyard and get Hugh. Then I went back to get Hop, and we followed behind everyone on our bikes. When we got to Hugh's house, there was already a small crowd gathered in the yard. For people were sitting on a mat spread in front of the house. Mrs. Yen, Mr. Tin, and 2 others, each holding one of Hugh's shoulders. The shaman was pressing his fingers against Hugh's temples. Hugh was convulsing as if having a seizure. His eyes rolled back, and he was foaming at the mouth. The shaman shouted, "Someone get me a chopstick or a stick, anything, quickly, before he bites his tongue." My mom ran into Hugh's kitchen, broke off a piece of firewood, and put it between Hugh's teeth. The harder the shaman pressed, the more violently Hugh convulsed. After about 5 minutes, the convulsions subsided. The shaman said, "Hugh, look at me. Look here. Focus. Good. Very good." Hugh calmed down, the convulsions stopped, but his eyes still looked vacant. The shaman said to Mrs. Yen, "He can't control his body right now, so he's vulnerable to possession. Keep a close watch on him. If he's hungry, give him milk, not solid food yet." We loaded the offerings onto a tractor and headed to the graveyard, along with a few gravediggers. 2 other men stayed behind to dig a hole on the plot of land next to Hugh's house, where the small coffin would be reburied later that night. The ceremony began around 8 p.m. We started digging, and it wasn't until 10 p.m. that we finally unearthed the coffin. The person inside must have been wealthy, because when Mr. Jung, the head gravedigger, washed the remains, he found 2 gold teeth, a gold ring, and a gold bracelet. After the remains were cleansed and placed in the smaller coffin, the shaman asked the gravediggers, "Did you check thoroughly? Is anything missing?" They assured him that everything was there. The shaman began chanting. As he was chanting, the candle in front of him suddenly went out. He asked again, "Are you absolutely sure nothing is missing? If we don't have everything, the ritual won't work." Mr. Jung, the oldest of the group, checked again. Looking at the remains, he said, "It seems to be missing a molar. I wondered if the person had lost the tooth before they died." The shaman asked them to recheck the clothes and belongings, but they couldn't find anything. He resumed the ceremony. Just as he finished, the youngest gravedigger suddenly fell to his knees and crawled towards the shaman. The shaman reached into his pocket and pulled out a gold tooth. The gravedigger bowed his head repeatedly. "Teacher, I'm so sorry. Please forgive me. I needed money for my son's hospital bills. I had no other choice. Please forgive me." The shaman said, "If you were having financial difficulties, you could have asked for help. Why did you do this? Don't you know how angry the spirit was? You're lucky you confessed, or I couldn't have helped you. Get up." The man couldn't move, still kneeling. "I can't get up, teacher. Help me." The shaman muttered something, and after a moment, the man was able to stand up. The shaman tasked Hop and me with watching over the small coffin and making sure the incense kept burning. We couldn't let it go out until everyone brought the coffin back to Hugh's house at 12:30 a.m. As Hop and I were talking, the shaman called us over. He led us to Mr. B.'s grave and told Hop, "Both of you apologize to him. You know what you did wrong. I don't need to repeat it." Hop and I, pale with fear, clasped our hands together. "We're sorry, Uncle," I said. "We know we were wrong. We won't disrespect you or disturb your rest again. We swear. Please forgive us." Hop stood frozen. I nudged him, and he finally managed to say, "Me too. I'm sorry. We won't do it again." Around midnight, they began filling the grave. At 12:30 a.m., we loaded the small coffin onto the tractor and headed back to Hugh's house. I rode on the motorbike with my mom and Hop. We arrived at Hugh's house around 1 a.m. The shaman said to place the coffin down at 1:10 a.m. By 3:30 a.m., they had finished building the tomb. The shaman told Hop to light a bundle of incense and place it in the small incense burner on the tomb. As the incense burned, the flame suddenly flared brightly. The shaman turned to everyone. "The official has accepted your apology," he announced. "You can rest assured now. Everything is settled." He turned to Hop and me. "Remember this lesson, you two. Never trifle with the spirits. Don't think that just because someone is dead, they can't do anything to you. Look at what happened to Thiot and Hugh. Have you learned your lesson? We nodded obediently. Yes, teacher. We've learned our lesson. We won't ever do it again. The shaman turned to Mr. and Mrs. Tin. After 49 days, you can perform a ritual for your son. If you want to see him or talk to him, come see me. Thiot's aunt nodded. Yes, teacher. We'll rely on you. I hope you can help us see him to ask if he needs anything. He's our only son. How will we live without him, teacher? She burst into tears. Mr. Tin tried to comfort her. The shaman pointed to Hop and me. Your nephew also wants to see these two. Tell them to come see me. Do you understand? Yes, teacher, we understand. Since the shaman's intervention, Hugh's condition had improved significantly, but he wasn't completely cured and still talked nonsense sometimes. The trauma had affected his studies, and he hadn't qualified for the high school entrance exam, so he was a year behind us in school. After 49 days, I, Hugh, Hop, Thiot's aunt, and Mr. Tin went back to the shaman's house. Mr. Tin and Thiot's aunt flanked Hugh, while Hop and I rode together on my motorbike. Lynn wanted to come, but Mr. Tin was afraid that Hop's driving wasn't good enough to carry 3 people. As we reached the shaman's gate, we saw the woman who had greeted us before standing there, waiting for us. She said to Thiot's parents, "Is your son named Thiot?" Mr. Tin nodded. "Yes," he said. "Please come in quickly. He's been waiting for you." Thiot's aunt rushed inside. I, Hugh, Mr. Tin, and Hop parked our motorbikes and went inside. There was a girl about my age sitting with the shaman. When she saw Thiot's aunt, she said, "Why are you so late? You've kept him waiting." Unable to find her son, Thiot's aunt burst into tears. "I miss you so much, Thiot. I miss you every day. I'm heartbroken." Thiot said to her, "Mom, please don't cry. It makes me sad to see you cry every day. Where's Lynn? Why didn't you bring her to see me?" His aunt replied, "We brought Hugh to see you. We couldn't bring Lynn. Someone had to stay home and watch the house." Thiot turned to me. "I'm sorry, Trang. I'm the reason you've been so scared." I looked at him and asked, "You've been visiting me? Haven't you?" He nodded. "I missed you all, so I came to visit." He then turned to Hugh. "Are you feeling better, Hugh?" Hugh nodded. Hop and Mr. Tin joined us. Thiot said, "Dad." Mr. Tin showered him with questions. "Thiot, my son, how are you? Do you need anything down there? Tell us if you need anything." Thiot chuckled. "Dad, you're asking too many questions. I can't answer them all." Hop suddenly said to Thiot, "Thiot, I'm sorry. We shouldn't have left you alone that night. Are you mad at us?" Thiot's face turned somber. "I was at first," he said. "But Hugh's grandmother was right. I was the one who wanted to go back. I can't blame you." Hop asked again, "But how did you die? You only went back to get our stuff." "I still can't believe it." Thiot looked at Hop and explained, "I went back to get our things, but I couldn't find my way out. I kept walking but couldn't find the exit. I was tired and cold, so I lay down and fell asleep. When I woke up, I walked home. I don't know how I died. Then some people came and took me away. They beat me and said I had to be a soldier. I begged them and they finally let me be a servant. I found out that I died unjustly. I wasn't supposed to die yet, but some official wanted revenge on me, so they took me as a soldier. I overheard them saying that they would be coming for you two next, so I tried to escape and warn you, but I couldn't speak. Luckily, Hugh's grandmother was able to escape and warn you, so you weren't harmed." The shaman, sitting nearby, said, "This is the consequence of your actions. Why did you provoke a powerful spirit? Now you've been taken to be a soldier down there." Thiot remained silent. His mother took his hand and sobbed, "My poor son, I've caused you so much suffering. Do you need anything? We'll burn it for you." Thiot said, somewhat sullenly, "You sent me money and clothes, but you forgot to soak them in alcohol, so they stole everything from me. I didn't receive anything, and the clothes you sent were all rags. I was embarrassed to wear them. Everyone laughed at me." His dad had burned the offerings, but he'd forgotten the ritual of soaking them in alcohol first, so they hadn't burned properly and were just tattered rags. His mom gasped, "We're so sorry. We didn't know how things were down there. We'll buy you nice things when we get home. We promise. We'll be more careful this time. Thayet nodded. He turned to Hugh. Get well soon, Hugh. You'll have a good life ahead of you. Follow the teacher. He will help you get better. And when you see Grandma, tell her to stop yelling and hitting me. I'm scared of her. Hugh smiled at Thayet but didn't say anything, just nodded. Thayet turned to me. Study hard, Trang. Graduation is coming soon. You'll fail if you don't study. I nodded. I know. I'll study hard from now on. No more games. Oh, and one more thing, he continued. Your dad has another wife. And a son too. Tell your mom to be careful. I was stunned. My dad was always home. He never spent the night anywhere else. My dad's always home, I said. How can he have another wife? That's ridiculous. Thayet scoffed. If you don't believe me, you'll see tomorrow. I visited you last night and heard him say he's going to visit his other wife tomorrow. Your half-brother is sick and in the hospital. I burst into tears. Thayet said, don't cry. It's all right. I have to go now. They won't let me stay here long. His mother pleaded, stay a little longer, son. He told her, don't be sad, Mom. Just come visit me when you have time. He said goodbye to everyone and vanished. The next day, I remembered Thayet's warning and asked to borrow Hop's motorbike to accompany my dad to the hospital. It turned out that my dad really did have a son, 7 years younger than me. He apologized and begged me not to tell my mom. I didn't want my parents to divorce, so I kept his secret to this day. Thank you for taking the time to listen to today's spine-chilling story. We hope you enjoyed these haunting moments with Asia Ghost Stories. If you liked this tale, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss any of our upcoming ghostly stories. We'd love to hear your thoughts about today's story. Feel free to share them in the comments below. Once again, thank you for joining us on Asia Ghost Stories, and we'll see you in the next chilling tale.